Your success with weight loss is shaped by your beliefs. And I know that sounds like a really wanky statement and something you'd probably read off of like a motivational poster in like a train station or something like that. You know what I mean? It's a little bit fluffy, a little bit woo, but stick with me because it genuinely is one of the most important things I'm going to say to you this week. Arguably, probably one of the most important things I've said in any video ever, to be honest with you. And by the end of it, I think you're genuinely going to be looking at your own patterns and understand a little bit why you've probably struggled with weight loss previously, but also how to navigate it and make it so it's more likely of a success story for you. Because the way you think about your weight loss journey before you've even started it has a direct and measurable impact on whether or not you succeed or fail. And most people have absolutely no idea it's happening. So let's talk about it a little bit. There's a concept in psychology known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And in simple terms, it's the theory that people's actions, habits, and behaviors are shaped by their own beliefs or the beliefs that other people around them have. It's that what you believe about yourself or what you've been told about yourself starts to influence how you live and how you behave. And then those actions and behaviors start to influence and reinforce that belief that you've got of yourself. Until eventually, the belief that you've had for yourself, whether that's because you've thought it yourself or because other people have told you, starts to become reality, even if that belief wasn't true to begin with. And it's one of the most fascinating and also frankly terrifying concepts in all of psychology. And it plays out a lot in weight loss more than almost in any other area of your life. So let me tell you a little bit of a story about, how this might have impacted me and how it also might be impacting you as well, just so you get a little bit of an understanding of what that concept actually looks like. So when I was a teenager, I wasn't exactly a hit with the ladies, I wasn't really genetically gifted. And I copped a fair amount of grief about my appearance. You've got people on the school ground calling you ugly, unattractive, remarking that I'd probably never get a girlfriend and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And about roughly a million other things that teenagers, the feral little fucking shits with no filter, tend to say to each other, just in passing comments. And look, I developed a top tier personality from a young age out of sheer necessity, because if I didn't, I'd probably be a virgin by this point, let's be honest. And that's just facts, right? But here's the thing, those comments, I know, they were jokes, and I'm not going to be a snowflake that says that they weren't anything other. But over time, those comments started to shape the belief that I genuinely was what those comments said I was. And as I started to believe those remarks and comments, my behaviour started to reflect it. I stopped caring about the clothes that I wore. I stopped taking care of my appearance. You know what I mean? I didn't really wear deodorant or aftershave or did my hair or anything. I wasn't exactly the most hygienic person in the world. And I say that with the benefit of retrospect and significant personal growth. The behaviour that I started to generate started to reinforce the identity which has been built for me. The less I cared about my appearance, the more I looked like someone who didn't care about his appearance, which reinforced the belief that I was unattractive, which made me care even less. And then, it just went round and round and round in a vicious little cycle. That was a self-fulfilling prophecy that kind of played out in real time. Now, things have changed significantly since then. I'm not saying that I'm a solid 10 out of 10, but I'm definitely, not what I looked like when I was a kid, hopefully, anyway. But that's beside the point. The point is how it gets relevant to you and your weight loss. Because the exact same mechanism, the self-fulfilling prophecy, is why so many people fail their weight loss journey before they've even begun. Think about the thoughts that come up when you decide to try and lose weight. Things such as, it won't work for me. I've tried many times in the past and it never sticks. I'm just destined to be like this. I'm going to fail. I'm always going to be fat. These things probably do sound quite familiar, right? And I'd be willing to bet that at least one of those statements has crossed your mind at some point when you decide to start a weight loss journey. Probably more than one. Probably more than once. And here's a really important thing that I want you to understand about those statements as well. There's no concrete evidence that suggests that any of them are true. Like, not a single shred of objective, verifiable proof that you are incapable of losing weight, or destined to fail, or fundamentally different from the people who do succeed. They're not facts, they're beliefs, they're opinions, and there's a very, very important distinction between the two. But, and this is where it might get a little bit uncomfortable, those beliefs, even though they are not facts, are going to influence your behaviour in exactly the same way that the facts would. Because your brain doesn't distinguish between a belief and fact when it's deciding to act. So, for example, you might decide that you want to lose weight, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you've got those quiet, persistent voices which are telling you you're just going to fail, you're not going to succeed, you're destined to be fat forever. And because that belief is there right at the back of your skull, subtle and backgroundish, it starts to influence your decisions and your behaviours and your habits. You don't track your food quite as carefully as you could, but what's the point? It's not going to work anyway, is it? You skip the gym on Wednesday, but you're probably going to give up next week anyway, so, you know, you have a bad day on Thursday and completely sack everything off, but that's just what always happens, right? This is just who you are as a person. And then you fail, you gain the weight back, you stop, and the belief gets stronger. It says to you, see, I knew it'd never work for me. The prophecy fulfilled itself, not because you were incapable or because the method didn't work. It's because the belief drove the behaviour that produced the outcome that reinforced the belief. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's fucking brutal. So in order to reverse this and actually make it work for yourself, the first thing you need to do is just be a little bit aware of it. Because the majority of the time, beliefs are just operating on the surface. They're not always things you consciously think. They're things that you feel. A vague sense of futility and disappointment, a quiet assumption that it won't stick, for example. And just by naming them, just by literally identifying that they're just beliefs and not true fact, you're starting to loosen their grip on you a little bit. The second thing is to deliberately replace the negative thoughts that you're having with something a little bit more useful and positive. Not something fake. I'm not saying you've got to be, you know, toxically positive and overwhelmingly positive and overwhelmingly optimistic about what you're going to achieve. I'm not asking you to stand in front of a mirror and tell yourself you're going to be a supermodel or you're going to lose, you know, like a stone in a week, because that's just unrealistic, let's be honest. But I am asking you to swap the thought of what if I fail to what happens when I succeed, because your brain will chase whatever picture it's painted in front of it. That's why these positive affirmation people always do look and sound positive, because the thought of positive affirmations every single day in front of the mirror might sound wanky on the surface, but it works because you are genuinely painting and envisioning that outcome for yourself. If you spend your time imagining failure, your brain will behave in ways which is consistent with failure. If you spend your time imagining success, what it looks and what it feels like, then your brain will start being consistent with the things that produce success. It's not magic, and it's not like the shitty manifestations that you see on Instagram every single day. It's just the way the human brain works. And you can use that to your advantage and use it as a weapon rather than a crutch. The third thing, and this is the most practical, is to build evidence that contradicts the negative belief. Because beliefs don't change overnight. They take a time, full transparency. But every time you show up, every time you do the thing that you said you would, even if it is imperfect and it's not amazing, you add a small piece of evidence to the pile that says, actually, you know what? I can do this. One good day doesn't change a belief. One sunny day doesn't make a spring. But 30 good days, or even 20, or even 15, or even 10 good days starts to. And eventually the new belief that is, I'm someone who does this consistently, starts to drive that behaviour instead. So yeah, your success with weight loss is shaped by your beliefs. Not because of like some spiritual, cosmic, you know, mystical reason or anything, but because your beliefs drive your behaviours and your behaviours drive your results. And then your results reinforce your beliefs, and then you're in a positive cycle instead of the negative one. The cycle's already running. You can't change that. The question is, which direction is the cycle running in? So identify the negative beliefs, challenge them because they're not facts, replace them with something more useful. Build evidence that contradicts it one day at a time, and stop asking yourself, what if I fail? What if this doesn't go right for me? Change that question to, what happens when you succeed? Because that question, as small of a shift as it might be, has more of an impact on your results than what you might think. If this video resonated with you and you liked it, please make sure you drop it a like. If you want to catch some more content like this, which is designed to help you get into the best shape of all time without hating the process in the process, make sure that you're either subscribed to this channel or following my Instagram at k.p_health. And if you want to get some more in-depth tailored advice on how we can help you do that, click the link in the description below, fill the form out, and I'll be in touch with you to show you how exactly we can do that. In the meantime, catch you in the next one. Peace.